He was one of the biggest draws in professional wrestling, a 6'8", 300-pound force of nature who sold out arenas from Dallas to Tokyo. If a promoter's attendance was tanking, they knew one phone call to him was a guaranteed packed house. He was a box office smash pretty much everywhere he went. So why was Bruiser Brody the one man they were too scared to make their champion? What happens when a guy is just too real for a scripted sport? This is the story of the most feared man in wrestling, an intelligent monster who protected his character at all costs, and the ultimate price he paid for it. Before the wild hair, fur-covered boots, and the swinging steel chain, there was Frank Goodish, a legitimate athlete. He was a college football player at West Texas State, so he had the size and the pedigree of a star from day one. Trained by the legendary Fritz von Erich, he was molded into a new kind of attraction. He became Bruiser Brody, a smart, wild, brawling monster who basically invented the hardcore style long before it even had a name. His matches were pure chaos, often spilling out into the terrified crowds and almost always ending in blood. His entrance alone was a show. Forget the ramp. Brody would storm right through the audience with his chain in hand, a whirlwind of energy that was both captivating and terrifying. This wasn't just a character, it was an aura, and that aura sold tickets. He was a true journeyman, a hired gun who rampaged across North America for promotions like the AWA, WCCW, and even the WWF, taking on the biggest names in the business. He fought Dick the Bruiser over who got to use the name, waged a bloody, worldwide war with Abdullah the Butcher, and even challenged Bruno Sammartino for the world title. But the one thing the major US promotions wouldn't give him was the belt itself. While American promoters saw a guy they could use but couldn't control, Japan saw a god. In All Japan Pro Wrestling, Bruiser Brody became a cult icon, finding the respect and, more importantly, the money he knew he deserved. For the first half of the 1980s, Brody was probably the most popular foreign wrestler in the entire country. The fans there nicknamed him Choju, which means the Super Beast. In Giant Baba's All Japan, Brody formed a tag team with Stan the Lariat Hansen that was only rivaled by the Road Warriors in pure, unfiltered dominance. And over there, his championship success matched his status. He won the prestigious NWA International Heavyweight Championship 3 times, once taking it from the legendary Dory Funk Jr. He and Jimmy Snuka won the 1981 World's Strongest Tag Determination League. In Japan, Brody was treated and paid like the main event star he was, pulling in tens of thousands of dollars a week and becoming the country's most sought-after foreign talent. But even in his kingdom, Brody's independent streak caused problems. In 1985, a money dispute during a tour with New Japan Pro Wrestling led to him and his partner walking out on the company, an incident Brody later called the biggest mistake of his career. It was a clear warning to the entire wrestling world. Bruiser Brody worked for himself and nobody else. So what was the problem? Why did the NWA and other big US promotions refuse to put their top prize on a guy who guaranteed a sellout? The answer, in one word, was control. Bruiser Brody was fiercely protective of his character. He built a reputation for being legitimately uncooperative, and his number one rule was simple: he didn't lose clean. Countouts and disqualifications were all over his match history, a creative way to protect his monster aura. This refusal to job, to let another wrestler beat him with a clean pinfall, made him a nightmare for promoters trying to build new stars or plan out long-term stories. He was also one of the sharpest businessmen in the game. He knew his worth and wasn't about to let any promoter undervalue him. This led to a long history of clashes over paychecks and creative decisions. In one infamous moment, ticked off at a promoter over his pay, Brody got in the ring with a young hacksaw Jim Duggan and just laid down for him, a defiant protest that completely embarrassed the promotion. In another, he terrified a young Lex Luger during a steel cage match in Florida by simply stopping the match, refusing to cooperate, and forcing a confused and scared Luger to climb out of the cage just to get away from him. This kind of behavior made him the perfect special attraction, a force of nature you bring in for a short, profitable run, but a total liability as a full-time champion. Promoters couldn't build a company around a man they couldn't trust to follow the script. Brody's independence was his greatest asset and, to the wrestling establishment, his greatest flaw. He was too real, too unpredictable, and ultimately, too dangerous to their business. Bruiser Brody's story is one of wrestling's most compelling and tragic tales. If you're fascinated by the legends of this business, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell because there are always more stories from the dark side of the ring. Let me know in the comments which other wrestling outlaws deserve their own story. Brody's nomadic career eventually took him to Puerto Rico's World Wrestling Council in 1987. On July 16, 1988, backstage at a WWC event in Bayamón, the line between his violent persona and real-world tensions tragically disappeared. In the locker room shower, after an argument, fellow wrestler and booker Jose Gonzalez, known as Invader One, stabbed Bruiser Brody with a knife. The chaos that followed is a story in itself. Paramedics were slow to arrive, and by the time Brody got to the hospital, he had lost too much blood. He died at the age of 42. What happened next was a gut-wrenching miscarriage of justice. Jose Gonzalez was charged with murder, but was acquitted after a jury accepted his claim of self-defense. The trial was buried in controversy. Key witnesses, like American wrestlers Tony Atlas and Dutch Mantell, claimed they never got their summonses to testify until after the trial was already over. The murder weapon was never found. To this day, many in the wrestling world believe that Gonzalez got away with murder. The incident sent a shockwave through the industry, and for years, many American wrestlers refused to work in Puerto Rico, crushing the territory's reputation. Bruiser Brody was never a major world heavyweight champion in the U.S., but his impact on professional wrestling is undeniable. His wild, brawling style laid the groundwork for the hardcore wrestling that ECW, WCW, and WWE would popularize years later. Mick Foley, a hardcore king himself, has said he studied Brody's tapes, wanting to model himself after the legendary Madman. In 2019, Brody was finally recognized with a legacy induction into the WWE Hall of Fame, a long overdue nod to his influence. The tragedy of Frank Goodish is that the very thing that made him so authentic and feared, his fierce independence and refusal to compromise, was what kept him from the industry's top prize. He was a man who refused to be controlled in a business that is built on it. He was a champion in every sense of the word, a draw, an icon, a revolutionary, but he was the one champion the system was too scared to officially recognize. His story is a permanent, haunting reminder that in the world of professional wrestling, the line between performance and reality can be fatally thin.